I'm Suchetana, and I'll take you through the session. This session will explore the rise of culinary tourism, mapping spaces with food, a discussion on the ways in which gastronomic explorations can provide fresh insights into new cultures. This session will be moderated by Ms. Reshma Rege, who comes with 14 years of academic experience and a decade of experience in hospitality sector. Currently, she is the head of the department and program head for hospitality management at Symbiosis School of Culinary Arts. As speakers for this panel, we have an exciting lineup. Jayesh Paranjape, the founder of the Western Routes, a travel company that focuses on culinary and cultural tours across India. In 2022, the Western Routes was awarded the National Tourism Award for the most responsible tourism project. Mr. Paranjape conducts food walks and trails that highlight the rich culinary heritage of Pune and also curates itineraries across the country themed around food, culture, and wildlife. He serves as the food critic for Times of India in Pune. He reviews city restaurants through a column in Pune Times and curates the annually held Times Food and Nightlife Awards. Next up, we have Kunal Vijayakar, who is a food writer, YouTuber, author, actor, political satirist, and one of India's most recognizable food show host. His YouTube channel is Khane Mein Kya Hai. He has been food columnist and writer with the Times of India, DNA, Asian Age, Mahanagar, and Hindustan Times. He is the author of Made in India, a cookbook. He is also an actor, director, and co-writer of the political satirical show, The Week That Wasn't, on CNN News 18. And we have Chinmay Damle, who is a researcher, a scientist, and a food enthusiast. An exciting lineup. Ms. Rege, I hand it over to you.
A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and most importantly, a warm welcome to our panelists here today. So we welcome you all to this very interesting conversation that we are about to embark upon. But before I carry this discussion forward, let me quote one of the world's culinary heroes and also an explorer, Chef Anthony Bourdain. And landscapes are all absolutely inseparable. And I think that is a starting point for all of us to understand what we are about to embark upon. To give a bit of a context and set the tone, I'd like to introduce the audience to what exactly culinary tourism means and what we are about to talk about. So to put it in definition, culinary tourism is actually an active pursuit of savoring local delicacies while seeking other cultural experiences. So that would be the textbook definition of culinary tourism. It could mean a lot of other things to other people. According to the latest survey, right now carried out in 2022, the culinary tourism sector, particularly in India, is at the cusp of explosion, as travelers are now making choices of their travel destinations based upon the food culture or the culinary experiences that they can get at these places. Some interesting statistics that I would like to quote before I hand it over to the panelists is that currently the valuation of the world or the global culinary tourism industry is at a staggering 804 billion US dollars and is set to reach up to approximately 3,300 billion US dollars by 2031, which is a growth rate of about 16% annually. So at this staggering statistics, we would really like to understand how this particular phenomena is shaping up. And though most of us invariably do indulge in culinary tourism without knowing that we are doing this, how then this can be shaped into a new area of enhancing the potential that a particular place has to offer in terms of cultural perspectives. So my first direction would be towards Mr. Jayesh Paranjape. You have been doing this for over a decade now through Western Routes, and I think you walk the talk. You have actually explorations through your company. So, sir, I now request you to make us understand how this has progressed over the last decade or so that you have been doing this, and if you could give us some idea on how the customer or the consumer behavior has changed over the past decade, where vis-a-vis how they want their experience to entail more of the food and culture of a particular place that they visit. Sir, over to you. Good morning.
So I run a company called the Western Roots, and so I mean, sort of the inspiration for the company was something very local. The name also comes from exploration in Maharashtra, particularly. And so when I started out, the concept was still there. I mean, we always say that it needs the West to come in and tell us what the concept are when they have been in our country since many years. So, so in Konkan particularly, Kokanat Ambe Khaila Jaitsa was a concept which has been around for a long period of time, right? But how to sort of mainstream it was sort of my inspiration. Like, maybe can I take some extremely local experiences and make them more, for urban people to sort of understand and experience. So that's how it started, really. So some of my tours sound very simple, like rice plantation. So Bhat Lavani is such a simple concept for probably the previous generation which I had. But, for my generation and my next generation, it's a novel concept, right? People don't know much about farming. I mean, even if they do, they've not seen where the produce comes from. So that was sort of the inspiration behind it, and the concept was really that. Initially, I started with Konkan, which is like a treasure trove of culinary experiences. I feel every 30, 40 kilometers. I mean, it's there every part of the country that the food changes every 30, 40 kilometers across, not just Maharashtra, but across the country, really. But again, because Konkan was sort of where my roots lie, that was for me, that was like a guinea pig of experiments where I could, sort of do these sort of experiences. So probably one of the first experiences in Konkan, particularly, I started was a mango picking experience. So which was going to somebody's home, obviously staying there, but also going to mango orchards, curating the food which has mangoes in it, a local food, obviously, and different forms of mangoes, different varieties of mangoes which are grown in the region. We just know Hapus, which is Alfonso mango, which is grown in Ratnagiri, but there are so many others which are grown there as well and used in everyday cooking during the summers. And so these type of experiences was something very local, which is what I wanted to give. And so the initial reaction to this was a little weird because, again, to market it to Punekars was a little difficult because for people, a lot of people's relatives are back in Konkan, or they've been doing this.
Sir, I think we've lost your sound. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now it's
Yeah.
okay.
So yeah, so the concept was sort of something which people from Pune, local people from Pune were aware of, but so the response was a little thanda in the first probably fun year, that the concept was also new for a lot of people. But I think the first 2-3 years batches which I did, where people did come and then people saw pictures of what we did, the food which we are eating, the experiences we are getting. And now, yeah, I mean, you also think, like, I think probably post 2017 or 2018, the concept of, food experiences in general has increased. So even for very local tours like the food walks, which I do, the response has been like gradually increasing. And then you also have things like cooking with the locals, like, going to those person's house and actually cooking. So it could be as basic as just, making a koshimbir or helping them make a modak or something like that. But for somebody who's grown up with the food family, it is something which is common, but for a lot of people, it is a novelty. So that's how the experiences have really shaped up. Konkan, we do a lot of trips. We do also do a popti party. Also, get sort of the local experiences, which also count. I've just come back from a strawberry picking tour yesterday at Pachgani. So that is a 1-day tour. So these type of activities is something which are picking up. So apart from, a lot of people don't know how strawberries grow actually. So they've seen the plant, they've seen strawberries in pictures, but so close to Pune, there's the whole town of Panchgani grows it. And so a lot of people don't know that, because the farmers were actually fairly skeptical of letting people in initially. But now I remember I've been to, I think, every farm in Panchgani, pleading them to start a picking experience. But everybody was scared that people will trample on their plants, because it's a fragile plant, it's a ground plant. So people were very skeptical of doing that. I convinced one person, Mr. Sunil Bilare, who has made his place into a big farm now, and he sort of said, "Okay, we'll let you in," and that sort of a thing. I told him that I'll pay 50 rupees extra to you from what the market rate of strawberry is. He was not ready to, but I wanted to give him an extra, because he was giving an experience which nobody else would have. And now I think if you see on Panchgani Mahabaleshwar Road, every place offers a picking experience, because
Absolutely.
that experiential travel has grown. People want to go to these farms and want to experience that. So that's been my
Right.
journey. I mean, again, I'm talking about only Maharashtra and a few tours which I've done in the past few years. So, and how they have grown. So this is something which is the tours which I do now are sometimes, I mean, we do have a lot of food themed tours. But this was the time back in 2012, 2013 was the time when we started doing these, and people were like, what are you doing? Like, so, sort of, what are these? You're charging 10,000 rupees to go and eat mangoes in Ratnagiri, which makes no sense to them. So, but that has changed, like that has changed a lot now.
So that really answers my question to an extent, that consumer perception is something which really drives niche tourism areas, definitely. So you have seen that it has changed, and then hyper localization is something about you spoke about. And do you also educate the people about the practices that are undertaken? Because that is something which and the theory of culinary tourism, there's a lot of talk about sustainability and understanding where your food comes from and how it lands on your plate. So is there also some education factor which is associated through your tours, which enlightens the tourists, the culinary tourists?
Yeah,
So to speak?
yes, it does. I mean, so for example, I'm going back to the mango picking again. So during the, 3-4 months of summer, each and every small household in Ratnagiri and other parts of Konkan converts into a small scale factory actually. So they will make mango products, from their homes, not just mango products, but other products as well. So which are employing women from the surrounding villages and, self-help groups here and there. So that is something which we see live in action when we go to these tours. And also we get to interact with the farmers, right? I mean, we talk about, we eat mangoes and we keep on complaining, kiti mahage, so how expensive it is. And but then you really need to, so when we go there and understand that it's not just those 2 months of mangoes, but a year long of labor of love for those farmers. Each an individual plant is like a child to them, each individual tree is like a child to them. So that sort of a thing is something which, so it's not formal education as such, but that's knowledge which comes which you would not know about, and you'd get it from person who has grown that tree for the past, so the family which we go to, they've been in the business for 350 years of mangoes actually, and multi-generational knowledge of growing mangoes basically. So yeah, I mean, knowledge is always there, but I think also, like, so the cultural aspect of it, knowing about that local community, knowing about the local food. One thing which gets my goat when I go to South India is a lot of people offer paneer butter masala when I'm traveling, and that's something which actually irritates me to no end, that there is so much of local food available, and we end up, I mean, nothing against paneer butter masala, but it's always on the menu everywhere. So
I know.
that's what sort of is also one of my inspiration to change that, and get people to eat local food.
Absolutely. I think that defines what one should do when you're experiencing the cultural in as a whole. So food is an integral part of it. So that brings me to the next question, or rather an insight, where culinary tourism not only offers unique and memorable eating experiences, but also plays a vital role in the consolidation, sustainability, and enhancement of the destinations. Mr. Chinmay Damle, I ask you this. You have written about how cities' foodscapes are the very soul of what a city has to offer, and at the same time, you have also discuss certain concepts of food trails and culinary journeys, which often happen to be a map to explore a destination. Could you just give us an insight into how your studies or research has time and again, given a deeper understanding of the spatial and cultural landscapes of a region? If I may hand it over to you.
The thing is, basically, let's talk about the spatial parameters and foodscape. So there are certain aspects. Basically, the genesis and history of foodways is intrinsically linked to the heritage of the place, of the region. And what happens is food is basically a repository of cultural identity. So the movements to recognize the tangible and intangible heritage are extremely important. Okay, what has been happening since the last few decades is that what is being presented as the food is seen through the notion of national cuisine.
Mm.
Okay, now a lack of national cuisine usually represents a diverse and multicultural society. And what is happening in India is the exact opposite, where we are in a way striving to come up with some kind of a national cuisine. So this is one thing which is related to culinary tourism since the last few decades. Uh, is one thing. The another thing is mapping of heritage along with the foodscape. Okay. So basically what happens is there are restaurants, there are food magazines, then there are Epicurean guidebooks which tell us where to eat or rather where not to eat. Uh, and restaurants do make a significant contribution to tourist destinations. So tourists do explore food and they explore the culture which is new to them. Now, most of the travelers, they like to experience the otherness. Now, this other, the factor of otherness is not, is sometimes desirable. It's not always desirable because this otherness also in Indian context comes with the notions of purity. They come with the notion of pollution. There is caste intertwined with it. Then we have religion. We have regional aspirations. So all these factors, they contribute towards defining the foodscape. And while doing that, we need to also take into account the self-fashioning of the middle class, which has been happening since last century at least, or even before that, from the mid 19th century, if you take into account Bombay presidency in the colonial times. So these conditions, these specific factors usually construct the foodscape of a city. And the foodscape of a city is often a culmination of several events that sometimes take place parallelly or maybe together. For example, I'll just give a short example. We talk about Dugdha Mandirs in Bombay and Pune. Okay, and we also talk about the emergence of cafe culture. But in the mid 19th century, when cafes actually, coffee houses actually started coming out in cantonment areas, the first problem they had to deal was the shortage of milk. The Bombay presidency was in a way notorious for its shortage of milk. So there was this Secretary of Agricultural Department, Mr. Ozzoni, who was an Italian gentleman and who was posted in Bombay. So he took cognizance of the problem. He got in touch with certain Indian leaders like Mahadev Govind Ranade, and he consulted them. To cut the long story short, they brought some cows and buffaloes from Karachi and Sindh. The process continued for a long time. That's how we have Thar and Parker cows in Bombay presidency. They brought buffaloes from Delhi. Then they invited a gentleman from Europe Mr. Howman and his assistant, Mr. Keventer. And together they built the first mechanical milk separator in Bombay. Then Mr. Keventer came to Pune farm and he experimented for almost 2 years. And he tried to make cheese in Pune. And he succeeded. Then he was borrowed by the Punjab government and he worked with them and then he left. And now we know how famous the brand Keventer is. We have his milkshake shops in many big
Across.
cities.
Yes.
Yeah. So Keventer basically started his career in Pune. So he used to conduct coaching classes for animal husbandry and dairy farming in Bombay and then in Pune. So I find such things interesting because after that, the movement to uh, make the make the condition dairy farming in Pune and in Bombay got speed. So we have this gradual change happening since last several centuries. So what happens is if we consider foodscape, we have this habit of starting everything after 1992. Oh, after 1992, certain things started happening. Oh, after 1947, certain things started happening. But the process has been very gradual. There was a road built from Khandesh to Pune to bring wheat. There was a road after the railway road was built between Bombay and Karnataka. People in Bombay and Pune started eating more jawar and bajra. So these factors need to be taken into account when we discuss heritage, when we discuss the foodscapes. So uh, if we let the tourists know, now all the tourists they the culinary so the travelers we have, there is a set of travelers who choose food as part of their traveling experience, and there are travelers who choose their destinations exclusively based upon food. Okay, so the other set of travelers, if they are choosing certain destinations exclusively based upon food, maybe the heritage, the genesis of the foodways could be narrated to them, and it might give them a better idea about the socio-political construct around the dish which they are consuming. For example, if you're talking about misal, misal comes with a baggage of caste. It comes with a baggage of notions of masculinity and femininity. There were people who thought that eating misal would bring independence to India. So rather than I mean, one aspect might deal with where misal originated or what is the so-called authentic version of misal, but the socio-political construct around misal, I think, is also important.
Okay, that's a wonderful narrative, actually. I mean, not just understanding how the ingredients are the way they are now, but understanding how they came to be and what the context of the journey was to be recognized as what they have become. So that's an interesting perspective there. So now that brings me to you, Mr. Kunal Vijayakar. I mean, I can actually, if correct me if I'm wrong, I think you are the epitome of a culinary tourist per se, because you not only travel to various destinations, but your intent is specifically to savor the delicacies, understand uh, along with it the culture of the food that is prevalent in that particular area. And through your stories and narratives, you have built up a huge fan following, particularly to understand, what a cuisine actually is and what the story behind it. Through your experiences, sir, could you tell me how your journey has been? And have you also, like Mr. Paranjape said, seen that interest or the growing interest that has come around to I am asking you this question from Amritsar, sir. I'm sitting in Amritsar, so you can
Okay.
understand. So it's
Okay.
been a culinary journey for me for the last 2 days,
Okay.
but I want your perspective on this, sir, to understand how that has
Okay.
changed over the years. Yes, sir, over to
Okay.
you.
First of all, thank you very much for including me, and I'm hoping that everybody can hear. Can you hear me? I'm clear. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I want to start off with what Chinmay said about a national cuisine, and I'm really, really happy that there is no such thing as a national cuisine in this country. First of all, because most countries with diverse cultures will never ever have a national cuisine. Exactly what Jayesh said. Every few kilometers you travel, the food changes, and that is what we need to preserve and keep going, because we are so diversely rich with our cuisines. And one of the big flaws of tourism that has impacted cuisine, according to me, is yeah, and it's a shining example uh, in Goa, a bit like what Jayesh was saying about butter paneer or paneer chili or whatever. I went to. I'm going to start with complaining, then I'll get into slightly more constructive conversation. I went to Goa after many years to the most populated part, which is Kalangut and Baga, and I was shocked to see what had happened to the restaurants over there. From being all Goan restaurants, be it Goan Christian or Goan Hindu restaurants, they've all turned into veg thali restaurants. Now you're on Kalangut, okay, and there are big boards saying biryani and pure veg thali and dosa and idli, and you basically, tourism has ruined the food culture of that area, according to me. And this is what we need to be careful of, that instead of the tourist going to a destination to eat and savor the food over there, they are going to the destination and changing the face of the cuisine over there. It may not change in the homes, but at least publicly, it is changing. So this is my one big complaint and warning, and I don't know how we can deal with it. But at some point, we need to start appreciating the foods of the regions we go to. For me, when I first started doing this show in 2006 on television, for me, it was really eye-opening, because as a family, we went on holidays to Mahabaleshwar. The most we could find in Mahabaleshwar was strawberries. And we chose to stay in certain hotels because those hotels serve Parsi food. So we could go to Mahabaleshwar. There was an old sort of colonial culture there, Parsi food and Conti food, and you could sit over there and have soup and have liver on toast for breakfast and soups and all, which you couldn't get in Mumbai. So we went again for some sort of culinary adventure to simple Lonavala, Khandala, Mahabaleshwar, and nearby hill stations from Mumbai. Till I started doing the show, these were the holidays. One never really went anywhere beyond the normal hill stations, and then you go to Delhi or you go to Agra or something to see the Taj Mahal, and you go to Delhi to see Qutub Minar and that kind of stuff. One of my earliest trips as part of the food show, the foodie that I used to do, was to Orissa, a destination I would never have gone to, honestly, because you start after Mahabaleshwar, Khandala, you start Singapore, Bangkok, and the Europe. You don't go to Orissa and to Andhra Pradesh or to Vishakhapatnam or those parts. But this took me to literally discovering. As I was discovering the food, I was also discovering the places, which was a very, very interesting journey for me. And so in all these years, my relationship with this whole country, and I want to pretty much stick to this country at the moment, because yes, there is tourism outside also. My whole relationship with this country has been through its food. And I think it's a wonderful way to connect with the diversity of this country. I did a little bit of reading up before this thing, because when your brief came to me, it just seemed so heavy and intellectual. And after all, it's a course. So, and I'm not professor material from any angle. So, I just sort of did a little bit of research to figure out this whole thing about tourism and culinary tourism. And I came across some very interesting sort of facts, is that an average tourist spends nearly 1/3 of his holiday budget on food, which is an interesting fact. Food travels across cultures with greater ease than any other tradition. So, because eventually food you can cook at home. So if I visit Hyderabad and I taste the biryani, and if I like cooking, I will try and recreate that in my own hometown somewhere, or if I travel as for work from Mumbai to say Chennai, I will slowly take my food along with me because I like my food and I want to be used to it. So it's amazing how food travels across countries, cultures so easily, And then friends will come over to your house, taste the food, like the food, then they will like the food, and and it starts spreading around uh, in in places that are not your home. Also, it in a way it attracts a certain amount of visibility. It gives your destination, how do you say? It gives you attractiveness to the destination. So you say, ki, I'm going to Amritsar to try the Amritsari fish or the kulchas in Amritsar. Amritsar जाएंगे तो Amritsari kulcha खाएंगे, Hyderabad जाएंगे तो biryani खाएंगे, Lucknow जाएंगे तो nihari खाएंगे या whatever Lucknowi food that you want, or you choose to go to Kochi and eat curry bean fish over there, or so your destination gets a certain amount of enhancement because of that, and it also helps protect the identity and culture of a destination. But it's not easy because with tourism comes change and adaptation, and if we can stop constantly adapting and keep retaining a little bit, of what your own culture is and not completely sell out in a way, it will just be better for the destination and it will be better for your identity and culture also. Also, the one very interesting thing is that it, unlike, talking from a pure tourist point of view, every destination has seasons, So you would not go to Goa in the old days, say when it's raining because you want to sit on the beach and all that, You would not go to Rajasthan when it is very hot because it's just, unbearable. But so weather dictates seasons, tourist seasons. Uh, but food can be perennial. At any season you go, you can always go for the food. So if you're going to Goa for the food, you can go January, February, March, April, May, June, July, wherever you want to go. The food is always there. And the local economy, of course, grows because of tourism and of local tourism. So and before I sort of hand over, there are two great Indian traditions that are huge as far as uh, culinary tourism are concerned. One is our street food culture in India. And if you just go looking for street food, you can just, it's unending. And two is temple cuisines of India, which are also, you go to a temple, you go to Jagannath Puri, you get a different kind of food over there. You go to a langar in Amritsar, it's a different kind of food over there. You go to Bake Bihari temple at Vrindavan, and you can get wonderful. So, temple tourism is also linked to food. Yeah, so I think I got a little lost in my whole the food thing, but I'm assuming you got my point.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I think what you're trying to say is that though it is inextricably linked when we travel, our, the whole idea is always that we have to savor the local cuisine. But then to put
We
it in the
should.
calendar, yeah, we should and we must. And I think we do it, though not formally to be classified as culinary tourism. But then what the point of this discussion I want to say is, can it be put to a formal context? That is what the whole discussion is, because we have, classified niche tourism, like medical tourism is a booming thing in India. And there is certain, there's infrastructure related to that created in the
Yeah,
country to
yeah, yeah.
facilitate, because it brings in a lot of foreign exchange. Now, there was one interesting fact that I read when I was researching for this particular session, is that the inbound traveler, that is the foreign travelers that come into India, are also now, because of the presence of social media and so many other contributing factors, are now discovering, rather I would say rediscovering, the national identity through its food and its various aspects and its regionality also. So food for us, even as a part of a culinary institute, we never speak about Indian cuisine. We talk about regional Indian cuisine.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so this is something which, if anybody of you could take this up and tell me that
Can I
has,
just
yes,
quickly say something about the foreign tourists? So I find in
yes,
my limited experience that the foreign tourist is made up of two kinds of people. One are the people who are petrified of eating Indian food and will not touch Indian water, Indian food, Indian anything. But there is a growing adventurous foreign tourist who I find far more adventurous than Indian tourists, who are willing to go and try because they've not come with preconceived notions of what the regional food is going to be, who are far more willing to try and come. I've just come back from Udaipur yesterday, and I was looking at the local restaurants in Udaipur, and there are lots of foreigners. Of course, there are lots of foreigners in Udaipur in any case, but sitting and eating so-called spicy food, one so-called on-the-road food, yeah, oil fried. Eating kachoris for breakfast is not the most healthiest thing to do, but they're doing it. So I think there is something in promoting our cuisine to the foreigners, and then what the foreigners do, we do after that. So it's good to percolate down to our local tourists. And we stop changing cuisines as we go. Opening thali joints in every place and Chinese restaurants in every place it's like tragic.
Is this something then that begs to a question to be asked, Mr. Vijayakar? I will keep that conversation to you. Is that because you visit so many restaurants and which always highlight, the local identity through its food, can then they be put into some formal setup where, through some initiative or where we actually direct the tourists to these particular areas, which these are the people who promote
I think
the
the formal setup will come from people like Jayesh, okay? Because they are the guides, they are the people who are physically taking you with the back with research, local research. So if it comes from organizations and people like Jayesh, it will be better. Then the infrastructure in the local joint will also start gearing up for this.
True.
Whether it's small home kitchens or whether it's restaurants, if people like food guides, tourist guides can inculcate this interest, I think it comes from there more than infrastructure being then subsequently infrastructure will happen once the demand is created.
Correct.
You can't create infrastructure before the demand, so it's not feasible.
Yes. Mr. Paranjape, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, so in terms of creating, one is that we can create circuits. So how there are circuits, right? I mean, in regular tourism there are circuits where you have Golden Triangle and Desert Triangle. Rajasthan has been doing it for a long time, and then you've got, so you can do like food tours, food circuits also. It's just that creating an infrastructure around it becomes very difficult because there are a lot of, so it's also to do with private organizations, right? Because if we are doing a circuit, it's not a destination but a restaurant, right? So if you are saying ki you have to go and eat at a certain restaurant, then one is that so a lot of people want to monetize that. If your name is being added to that circuit, then would you give me something? So it's a little bit of a sticky situation when you are suggesting to go and eating at restaurants which personally you could go, and so food is personal, right? So perception changes, which everybody is something which is a favorite among one person could be a not so favorite among other people. So suggesting a restaurant is very sticky that way to make a circuit around it. But you can always do that, how Heritage has circuits, we can also do circuits in different parts of the country. So I do the food walks, right, in Pune. So something like that. So in fact, it's very interesting, the previous question, how it has changed over the years. So in 2012, probably when I started doing the walks, it was just me and probably Anubhav Sapra, who runs Delhi Food Walks, and nobody else. And now if you search for food tours, every city has somebody doing a food tour. If you go on Airbnb, there are many people who are offering their services as a food guide to a. So that actually has been increased because of the, a foreign client which has come into the city and, want to explore the food. So that way, creating those circuits is very important, which the government can do in a way, saying ki, I mean, each government has its own religious circuit, they have their own specific circuit. So if not particularly about street food, because again street food is again suggesting something which could be perceived as dangerous to some people as well in terms of hygiene and all of that. But in terms of local produce, actually is very easy to do that, like a mango tour or like anything. I mean, the local produce of that place particularly, and then that can be built up on here. So there are two different things. One is the city thing, which is mostly to do with street food and yeah, and then there is produce, which can be. So I mean, I'm doing that in a way that I am doing the tours myself, but with the hope that it would create a circuit on its own. But there's always a thing that, my exclusivity goes that I'm doing something and then somebody copies that as a circuit. But yeah, I mean, but then yeah, I mean, government can definitely do something in terms of, creating out a circuit for travelers to, go on. And then infrastructure can come in, obviously.
Yes, I mean, that is incidental. Of course, it will come along.
May I butt in?
Yeah, please do.
Since Mr. Vijayakar complained, I also have a complaint to make. Most of the food history which is talked in India, it centers on who invented the dish. Okay, and then there are several stories which have come up, pav bhai, and most of them are outlandish. So what happens is food is basically a powerful vehicle for conveying deep-rooted meanings and abstract concepts, which highlight or specify the uniqueness of a destination. And I feel one of the important tools to do this is building food museums. We have one in Tanjavur. Okay, we have kind of a food museum in Ahmedabad, but apart from that, we don't have anything in India. So basically, displaying food of the people through times and places has been a bit common in Europe, but we don't have that culture here. So we can have agricultural practices, we can have tools, the activities, then the factors behind climate change, how potato came to Bombay Presidency is a fascinating story. Okay, or there was a group of doctors who campaigned for a few years to let people know that eating tomato was safe, and now we have tomato everywhere. So these kind of things basically enhance the experience of food and help us be more uh, uh, welcoming of other cultures. It gets rid of the exotic tag uh, which comes along. So I think food influencers have got a lot to do with that because yeah.
Yeah, Mr.
Yeah,
Vijay.
I want to just add something to what Chinmay said, and he's very right, is that stories get distorted very often and are in the realm of ridiculousness. Now, I've had this, I was in Calcutta 15, 20 days ago, okay? And we were doing some Avdi food in Calcutta, which is important because eventually Wajid Ali Shah died in Bengal and were not in Lucknow. So I used to have this continuous sort of battle with friends of mine who are Bengali, saying that our biryani that we get in Mumbai, which is the Mumbai biryani, like Dilli Darbar kind of biryani, is far tastier than the Calcutta biryani. And they said, no, but our Calcutta biryani has potato in it, And so then there was a story they saying that, see, Wajid Ali Shah, by the time he reached Bengal, was so broke that he could not afford to put mutton inside his biryani, so they started adding potatoes into the biryani. So I was cooking with this lady who's from the family, and she's, this is absolute rubbish, because do not make Wajid Ali Shah to be a pauper who had no money. It's a story which has gone wrong. The fact is, when potato came at that point of time, it was an exotic vegetable, and it was probably more expensive than meat because it came in from abroad. And hence, when Wajid Ali Shah decided to add potato into his biryani, it was not as a replacement for meat which he could not afford, but he was adding exotica to his otherwise famous dish. So this is this kind of stories that go wrong. So I just thought I'd tell you this little story. It occurred to me when you talked about the potato. I remember my grandmother, if she was alive, would have been about 100 years old today, did not like potato. And it was ridiculous because I said, "Gharat sagre batate khatat. How can you not like potato?" So she said, "Amcha lhanpani, when we were small, the potato was rationed and it was of very poor quality. So whatever we bought was terrible tasting. So we grew up not liking potato, which she never ate potato after that. So these are the stories that we need to be told to people of where they've come from. It's like Chinmay talked about tomato. Tomato today in every food there is tomato. You cook everything with tomato. You start the north, yes, everything is done with the Punjab is done with a tomato and onion paste. Everything, okay, bhuna hua tomato or pyaz. But when did Maharashtrian food start getting so much of tomato in it? When did Malwani curry start getting tomato in it? So this true. Jayesh is laughing.
Eye roll.
Yeah, that's what.
I don't.
So
Yeah.
so this is. I know we've digressed from tourism to this, but these are interesting
But
stories.
yeah,
But
they are. I think
yeah,
storytelling is an important and integral
yeah,
part of culinary tourism, so to speak, because that is what has been said also, that
yeah.
the
So you
narrative
look
has
at
to change.
you look at most temple cuisines in
Yes,
South India. There is no
yes,
tomato in it.
correct,
You know?
correct. Yeah, I
Yeah, even
think,
Bhandari cuisine does not have tomato.
Bengali.
There you go.
yeah,
Yeah,
it doesn't. It
not
doesn't.
at least not supposed to have tomato
Supposed
in
right.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that could be another panel of discussion where we can discuss about how ingredients have now traversed the regions and were never a part of the cuisine.
Yeah.
But then, because we now soon have to take some questions, so I just want to ask a couple of questions before we go to the actual Q&A. We have spoken a lot about how tourism can be developed, and it already is there. I mean, let's be honest, food is a prime motivation for people to travel and explore the area. But do you see this? There are some challenges in terms of, there are many things that you spoke about. Is you know the actual identity of the food of that place is often put forth in a different format, which actually is not what it is supposed to be, especially in the age of influencers as we speak. Do you see that to put it into a formal way, or develop a certain circuit of food tourism, uh, what are the hurdles or challenges that you think, Jayesh? First, I'll ask this to you because you are doing it in a setup where have you met any resistance, or is there always, barring the complaints of the customers, of course we cannot take that up, but do you think there is a resistance for people to delve deep into the culture or the heritage through food? I mean, if you understand what I'm trying to ask. Yeah.
It's also like so one is that after eating a lot of local food for 6-7 days, on the 6-7 day I get a complaint saying atta varan bhat pahiye kiwa that sort dal chawal or kadi khichdi, that sort of, which is fine because you going into a
You used to, yeah.
newer place, you are not used to that cuisine. So
Right.
I mean, as a tour company, I'm not very particular about that type of thing after 4-5 days, because it's personal choice also, right? You can't force people to eat local cuisine if they don't want to eat. But I mean, we generally get signups for the tour which people are a little more experiential or experimentative than the regular travelers who would take along cooks and they make pohe and shrikanda puri for lunch and dinner. So I mean, we've got a separate, like a different traveler who are coming in for that. I mean, for that experience. But one thing which I find difficult to sell as a tour company is a completely out and out food experience where people are paying money for an so I'm sure there are takers. I mean, I'm sure there are people who are, but then you can't go to Ladakh and just do food and not see the destinations which are, somebody who's spending a lakh of rupees for a 6 day or a 7 day or a 10 day tour. Then for them, just food makes no sense. I mean, so for me, it is very it is very what do you say, thing that I need to balance
Limiting.
it out in a
Yeah.
way that local food is part of my regular travel plans. But similarly, with, I mean, when I go to Indore, it's called an Indore food tour. But I also do Mandu, Maheshwar, which are historically important places because yeah, so an out and out food tour is something which is is a difficult sell for me, because people want to go to that destination and also see some of the other destinations. I mean, also food and
Yes.
heritage go hand in hand, right? So I mean, it's also
Correct.
to do with a lot of if you go to a temple, an old temple or a cave or something like that, so that's always there as a so like I said, it's a hard sell to do only food. I mean, I could go to Kolhapur for 3 days and do only a food tour, but at the same time, somebody will want to go to the Ambabai temple or the Rankara Lake or those type of things. So it's both ways. So I always, if there's only a food tour, then I sort of balance it out with a few things here and there. And if it's just a regular tour of then I find ways to take people to local experiences. Like my Ladakh tour is a very touristy experience. Because when you're spending so much money, you're going so far, you do those destinations which are touristy. But then how to make that a little more food friendly is that then you add local experiences, dining at somebody's house, uh going to a specific, so we go to, in Turtuk we go to somebody's house who serves Balti cuisine. They're Baltistani people. So we go, and then Hazira, who is the lady, she was the first person with her husband. They started a Balti kitchen. It's called a Balti kitchen. And now over the past, I think 10 years or so, that they've become so popular that every restaurant there is a Balti cafe now. So but yeah, I mean, it's great thing. I mean, I can it's so the tourism has driven that, where the local community is very proud of the food they are serving. So that's how sort of so I find it a little difficult to sell a food tour, but if you balance it out with heritage, with culture,
Yeah.
then it makes more like a wholesome tour for a lot of people. So
Absolutely. And I think a combination product will always work
yeah,
well,
yeah, it's always
particularly
works.
if it's one, not the other. I think it
Yeah,
would be a better option also. And that is also, I think, something which most of the culinary tourism circuits across the world also speak about, is that the heritage should be the culture of that city should be the prime, point of
correct.
resting, and then you
Yes.
can go ahead from there. Uh, of course, combination products are something which have always worked. Kunal sir, this question is, if yeah,
Yeah,
please go ahead.
if I mention that, to see, I agree completely with what Jay is saying. But these are tours that have been planned, okay, and tours that somebody has opted for, saying that I would like to go on this tour of Ladakh or whatever. I'm saying I've turned up at a destination, okay.
Mhm.
I'm saying, why can't governments, municipalities, people who run that city, I'm not using state, I'm saying city people. Like, you go to any big city in the world, there is a food market. You go
Yes,
to
yes.
Barcelona, there is the La Boquera, which is 1200 AD. It's a food market which encourages you, give you space, they give you hygienic surroundings, washing up facilities. You go to Singapore, there are hawker centers. You go to Toronto, there is the St. Lawrence market. In London, there is Borough Market. which have all been, the municipality has supported these vendors. The vendors don't need to be the same. You don't get a permanent site there. You get a 3-month slot over there. You bring your thing, and this is where people who already gone to that city will go and experience. It's also a food experience,
Yeah.
So they may not do a full, I'm not going to Barcelona only to eat, but I'm going to Barcelona and I have to have lunch somewhere. Let me have a local experience. I have to eat dinner somewhere. Let me have a local experience, So there's the big redevelopment of Bhendi Bazaar happening. Yeah. And all the old Bhendi Bazaar, of course, I don't know, it looks atrocious what has happened there right now. But what was meant to be was all the old stalls in Bhendi Bazaar were going to be rehabilitated in what was supposed to be a very nicely set up, clean, hygienic hawker center, which has not happened. But this is what tourist department should be doing.
Right.
Encouraging. So if Maharashtra Tourism decided, I did a show with Maharashtra Tourism focused on food, only on food, So that is what needs to be done.
I think to an
Correct.
extent, I think Delhi Haat is one of the places which is
Yes.
Excellent.
very
Yeah.
similar, which the Delhi
Yeah.
Tourism Board has taken it up actually.
Correct. And when I first went to Delhi Haat about 10 to 15 years ago, I thought, where touristic place you're taking me to? But the food was really good. It
Correct.
was.
So the food festivals are, they're the ones
Yeah.
which actually attract a
Yeah.
lot of people as well.
And that's
Mr.
also
Damle,
run by the tourism board. I mean, it's
Yes,
the
yes, it is
tourism
one
board
of those
is also
examples.
part
Yeah.
of that thing. So that makes a lot of sense. I mean, even when I go to Delhi, every time I go to Delhi Haat. So, but yeah, it's like, something like that in Pune or Bombay would be really lovely.
Yes, I think initiative and a policy in that direction is something which,
Yeah.
in fact, this is something which we have been discussing as a culinary school, because they too play an important role as far as creating experience or even generating the kind of interest that a city can offer, and also training the students. Mr. Damle, you were about to say something. Sorry, I
Yeah,
interrupted.
I think food writers, influencers, food historians, they also need to make some efforts towards changing how common people perceive food these days. Because a lot of efforts, as I said, are invested in finding out the origin of a particular dish. But they also need to make people aware that they also need to educate people about taking new experiences, letting them know that maybe they can try when they travel to Uttarakhand or Kedarnath. Maybe they should not expect masala dosa and try local Uttarakhand, because you go to Gangotri and all the shops sell poha and masala dosa.
Yes,
Okay, the
yes.
last year I was there and there was a family who was fighting with the restaurateur for they demanded fresh coconut chutney, and I was like, I had no words. So
Where is the coconut coming
I
from?
mean, government policies are important, but I think there have to be some efforts directed towards common people, because they are the ones who are going to travel. And there is a sense of pride, regional pride, national pride, which make them demand so-called authentic dishes. And they believe that the food that they eat, the food that comes from the region to which they belong, should be available everywhere. When we travel, for most of them, traveling is the primary activity, and food becomes the secondary
Secondary, yeah.
activity. So
Right.
this secondary activity should not spoil the foodscape of the city or the region.
Agreed.
There is a lot happening actually with YouTube having exploded in a way, and media having sort of gotten democratized. There is no institution stopping you from writing anything. And if you go, and I go on to YouTube very often when I'm trying to do research also, if
Yeah.
I'm traveling, say, to Udaipur, one is to find local people to tell you what is there. But if you just go onto YouTube and Instagram, there are local people who are posting about
Yes.
their own food. And
Right.
so there is a lot of information now slowly available if you
Yeah.
bother to look for it. And
Right.
I think people who are interested in food are probably doing that,
Yeah.
So there is a lot happening from influencers, and maybe not from the big influencers, because the big influencers are still looking for revenue, but small people who are doing it from the bottom of their heart with absolutely no expense, purely for the love of their own region and cuisine, are the guys to look for. And I also look for them before I go and go and shoot or cover or whatever. No, but there are these people, local people who you have to look for them really hard, because they don't have millions of followers and they don't have anything, but they're there.
Right.
And you need to go looking for these local people to find the food.
Absolutely.
I find one state which is a little unbothered about, which takes pride in their local cuisine is Kerala, actually. I think it is very difficult to find any other type of cuisine in Kerala, particularly in street foods and out. I mean, in restaurants, you'll still get it. But Kerala is, I find, very, not just in food, but in everything else, I think. Even the way they build their houses. So even a rich person will stick to a very even if the a house looks posh, it will still have those heritage elements to it or traditional elements to it. The same thing, I mean, in Kerala, you'll find food, you'll find paneer, but you'll find it made in their own style, which is what I find in Kerala particularly.
Yeah.
But I come back to government, okay, because Kerala tourism 25 years ago or 30 years ago, when they the line God's own country is not created by from history, it's created by Kerala Tourism Board, and the amount of backing that Kerala tourism did for tourism is unparalleled if you compare to what the other states are doing. And therein lies the contribution of institutions and government to help. It is very important because they have the money, the backing, and the bandwidth and the exposure. So Kerala is a great example because there is a big hand of Kerala tourism in what they've done. So including the facilities on the backwaters and the cuisine and everything, it's been promoted, supported, and all that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that is what this whole panel actually aims at understanding also, that there is information, but the right kind of information, if it is put in the right format and also aided ably by the decision makers and policy makers, it can go a great way. So I think now there are a lot of people who would be interested in asking some questions, because we have been talking a lot about food and I'm sure it's lunchtime. So there are some questions which
And
are
I'm also
coming.
very hungry.
Yeah, I can understand. I am actually waiting to go to the dhaba, which everybody has been like, the Bharwa dhaba for lunch. So I'm looking forward to that. So I think
I am waiting for an invitation to Jayesh's popti party. That is what I would like to.
I think that would be the best outcome of this panel, Mr. Paransky. That's a hint.
I do that in Srivardhan, actually.
Oh, great. That's a beautiful place as well. So I think the first question, if I may take it, is from our director of the Symbiosis School of Culinary Arts, Mr. Atul Gokhale. He was the one who was very keen that this panel discussion happen, and he has given me the responsibility of moderating. Sir, good afternoon.
Fabulous discussion we are having with the all stalwarts from different regions and different expertise coming in. Thank you, each one of you, to actually come over here and express and well moderated, Reshma, you are taking it forward. I wanted to butt in every single point when somebody was saying something, but I resisted myself from actually coming in over here. But yeah, the whole, I'm not having a question, but I would say that as experts in your respective fields, and we as a School of Culinary Arts, we have a responsibility towards directing our cuisines and our food culture to a next level. Since India now is poised to become and on the cusp of becoming a global leader in all aspects, I'm sure all these other things will fall in: governmental policies, requirements of people to travel and understand and being educated about eating food in different regions. I would suggest a forum like this and a forum taken from here further in a college for further discussions with government will definitely take it forward. I really want to thank all of you, in fact, for coming out with this kind of great discussion which is happening over here. Reshma, back to you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So Chitna, we do have some questions.
Yes, yes. I believe Muskan Parekh has a question. She sent it to us before.
Ma'am, my question was that we all know that post-pandemic many things has changed. So my question was that how do you see that what are the changes that has come into culinary tourism after the pandemic, and what are the challenges that we are facing post the pandemic?
Okay, I think we spoke a bit about the challenges, but would anybody of the panelists understand, has the pandemic really been in any sort of,
I find the post-pandemic, I think because everybody was cooped up at home, seeing so many food videos and seeing so many travel videos, there has been a positive impact
Positive
on
outcome, yeah.
tourism and food tourism. I mean, the type of, I mean, being a travel agency, I have taken full advantage of revenge tourism. I mean, so it's impacted pretty positively. In fact, hygiene levels have, to a point, people are, and I'm not saying people are following hygiene levels as such, but I mean, everybody is a little conscious about the fact that, hygiene levels have gone up a little bit. People are doing a specific due diligence in terms of, travel, where they're eating and that sort of a thing. So it's impacted quite well on the travel industry in general.
Great. So that's a positive outcome, I think, because the industry did get affected directly because of obviously.
So we
But
talk
then,
about
yeah,
mass tourism and how bad
Yeah.
it is, but that's the reason the tourism industry is sort of reviving itself, is because
True.
people are wanting to travel up after a year and a half of being cooped up at home.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, we have another question from a student which has come to us. I'll read out the question because she's not around.
Okay.
Amrita Lodha sends a question saying, how important is innovation in the menu when assessing a restaurant?
Oh, okay. That's an allied question, I would say. Mr. Vijayakar, would you like to, is innovation important in?
Yes, innovation is important, not only in a menu, I think in a cuisine also. Otherwise, cuisine is a living, breathing organism which has to grow. And while there's great importance to what we so-called authentic cuisine, yeah. But if you look at cuisines over like 300 years, 400 years, they've all grown, and they grow only because of innovation. If somebody decided not to innovate, it would never grow. So innovation is important, I think, but not so drastic that it tastes terrible. But yes, I think innovation in every aspect is important. You start adapting to produce that you get in the local areas. If I was to create Malwadi food out of Malwad, I'm going to have to innovate to be able to sustain myself. So yeah, yes, I think innovation is important.
In the age of dal chawal sushi.
I don't know whether that's innovation or
that could taste nice though.
Yeah,
that's abomination if not innovation.
There's a difference between fusion cuisine and confusion cuisine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you for a wonderful session.